Hi all, Dustin here. This video presentation is going to cover some of the basics of page design and layout, paying close attention to common business communication genres. First, I'll be looking at some resumes and CVs, and then we'll move on to proposals, which is the genre that you'll be working on throughout the rest of the term. I'm going to be referencing Robin Williams, the design guru, not the comedian. I'm going to be referencing her CRAP principles, contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity throughout this video. So if you haven't viewed Lance Cummings' video on CRAP, please do so before watching this. Okay, so there are a few principles to master if you want to create good, interesting, and engaging design. In this module, I will pull out typeface, white space, and color because I think these elements are all key in good design. What's really cool though is that Williams' CRAP principles, if you use them as a heuristic, get at all of these design issues. So CRAP in particular is what we're going to be applying to some common business genre documents. Before moving forward, I wanted to briefly talk about fonts. Who doesn't? With business genres, you'll most likely be working with two types of fonts, sans serif and serif. Serif, like Times New Roman, Georgia, has the fancy little feet at the bottom, at the end of each letter. And sans serif, sans meaning without, does not have the feet. So fonts like Arial, Helvetica, Futura, and old print media typically uses the rule of using sans serif as headings and and serif fonts as text. So the idea being to draw attention to, create contrast with headings, and have your text uniform and easy to read. This mindset, however, I think is starting to slowly go away. So most websites, if you notice, use sans serif fonts exclusively. So let's take a look. So Starbucks website, as you notice here, not using the serif font, using sans serif exclusively. Wikipedia also uses sans serif font. But if we go to something a little bit more traditional like the New York Times, you'll notice that they're using serif throughout, so in the headlines and in the text. So with this detour of fonts in mind, if you're wanting to use two types of fonts in your business documents, I still think you could get away with using serif for text and sans serif for headings. If you notice, that's what Word does automatically. So they have Calibri and Cambria. And if you notice, the headings is a sans serif font and the text is a serif font. Okay, so on to the examples. First, I want to look at a sample resume that I pulled offline to see if it upholds the CRAP principles. Okay. So, first impressions of this page. What do you guys think? It's busy. There's not a lot of white space. I know I certainly don't want to read it right off the bat. But why? So, I'm going to apply the CRAP principles moving backwards, actually, with the acronym. So I'm going to start with proximity. So the proximity principle says that if items are close together, it indicates that there's a relationship. So with business documents, headings are a good way to keep related items close in proximity to one another. So if you are using headings and you're using them correctly, this helps with proximity. But what do we think about this person's contact information? There's an address flush left, there's an address flush right, and then there's this contact information in the center. would the design of this document be improved if this information were closer in proximity? For example, what if everything were to be flush left over here, name kind of larger, and address and contact information just all flush left? That's one way to keep proximity and keep things close together. So on to alignment. This is the principle that says nothing should be placed on the page arbitrarily. Every item should have a visual connection with something else on the page. One of Williams' cautions is to not have multiple alignments on the page. So in most cases, she claims you should stick flush left unless you're trying to create contrast. So if we notice, Emily has flush left, she has flush right, and she has center. And I think these multiple alignments are creating a little confusion on her page. Repetition. So if we remember, this is the document principle that says repeat some aspects of design throughout the document. So if we notice, Emily is repeating quite a bit here. She's using one font throughout. She's using bold and italics throughout. And she's also using bullet points, and she's using bullet points kind of smartly, right? She has 2 throughout, so she's not using 3 or 4 on some, but just 2 throughout. But if we look closely here, we can see that Emily is using bold for just about everything. Her name, address, headings, places of work. By doing this, she loses the value of repetition. That is to say, repeating certain design elements doesn't signal anything with this resume. I think closely related to this principle is contrast. So this means if 2 items are not exactly the same, then you should make them different, make them really different. Largely, I think contrast is what this resume is missing. So making the headings stand out from the places of work is one way to create contrast. Perhaps using different fonts is another way to create contrast. There are multiple ways to create contrast in this resume. Let's take a look at another document that I think makes really good use of contrast and really good use of the CRAP principles. It's a CV, so the purpose is a little bit different. But if we notice right away, it's a lot different than the other one. There's lots of white space, lots of kind of bold decisions that this person made with her design. So if you notice, alignment's really interesting and really easy to read. Everything, all of her headings are flush left, and right up against those are the texts that she wants to talk about. Uses bold in particular ways, doesn't overuse bold. Using 2 fonts, she's creating contrast up here with her name. Really interesting style issues up here. Also, if you notice, most CVs, like resumes, keep contact information at the top. She chose to put it at the bottom here, and so I think that's even creating a contrast, kind of a bold statement, which is interesting. Okay, so this first example doesn't quite use the CRAP principles. There's no real contrast, alignment is an issue, repetition has no power, no value. But the second that we looked at does a lot of things right. Lots of contrast, there's real clear alignment, repeating style elements throughout, being bold and different. So an example of what to do and what not to do design-wise. Real quickly, let's look at this proposal, a sample that I pulled from the internet, which is probably about the middle of the road design-wise. Contrast is created from the start, as you can see, with these large headings. Alignment up here might be an issue. Maybe this should be flush left. Maybe all of this information should be flush left as well. But largely, I think it's upholding the CRAP principles that we talked about throughout this presentation. Maybe these headings are a little too bold for a business report. I don't know. What do you guys think? Hopefully, this presentation has given you some insight about how you want to go about designing your own report. I think most importantly, make people want to read your proposal. How can you make people want to read them? What kind of interesting design can you use to draw the eye, draw attention to certain aspects of your proposal? Okay, that's it for today. I enjoyed talking with you all. Thank you.